All right, everybody, really excited about the video today. Been wanting to make this one for a while. And today we're gonna be talking about the 80-20 principle. And this is completely different than the 80-20 that you see pitched on Instagram a whole bunch about like diet, eat 80% right and 20% cheat meals. Forget all that. We're gonna get to the real 80-20 principle and how it can dramatically affect your health and fitness. All right, so first we're gonna talk about what 80-20 is, where it came from, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how you can apply this to your everyday life, or more specifically to your fitness and health. So the 80-20 principle, what does it mean? So basically, it's trying to explain that the minority of your inputs, so roughly 20%, is often responsible for about 80% or a large majority of the outputs or rewards or results that you're looking for. The basis for this principle came way back in like 1897 with a guy named Wilfredo Pareto, who was an Italian economist and saw that 20% of the people in Italy owned 80% of the land. We see this pattern just replicated all over. So I mean, even here on YouTube, you think like the top 20% of YouTube channels get 80% of the views and watch time and subscribers and all that. Whereas inversely, 80% of the channels on YouTube only get like 20% of total traffic. This is different than the typical pitch that you'll see on Instagram or when they're talking about nutrition, that like, oh, if you eat 80% right, you'll get 80% of the results. That's a one-to-one relationship. The real 80-20 principle shows that there's a disproportionate return on your efforts versus results in some areas. And the key is narrowing in on what that vital 20% is that gives you 80% of the results versus spending a whole bunch of effort on the 80% that only gives you 20% of the results. Now, one thing I should clarify is that I keep saying 80-20 because that's kind of like the general name that was given to it. Sometimes it might be 30-70, 40-60, still that's a disproportionate relationship. Sometimes it might be that 20% of your inputs actually gives you about 100% of your outputs. So it doesn't always have to add up to being 100. So keep that in mind. This is really where people talk about like, where can I get the biggest bang for my buck? And the cool thing about this is it's fractal. Within every 80-20, there is another 80-20. So let's say you've seen that 20% of your inputs give you 80% of the outputs. 4% gives you 80% of the 80% you're already getting. So that's really like 4% gives you 64% of your overall results. And basically 1% of all your inputs and efforts can result in 50% of your given value, you know, what you're looking to get out of it, what your reward is, what your output is. So this is really, I know it sounds like I'm telling you to slack off, but I'm not. I'm not telling you do less and you'll get more. I'm just telling you is that there's probably in your life, there are chunks where focusing on just a little bit, the vital few, that important 20%, can give you a lot more results, and you might just be putting your effort into the wrong spot. And how I see this applying to health and fitness overall is really important. I mean, when I'm thinking about factors that affect health and fitness, think about things like genetics and age and injury history and nutrition and recovery, lifestyle, like what your work is like, whether you have an active job or not. Your training, obviously, what kind of training, what exercise you're doing, strength training programs, all that kind of stuff is very important. And then mental health, it's a category. Say that breaks out into 8 inputs that potentially affect our health and well-being, our fitness level. If you aren't using kind of an 80-20 kind of weighting mentality, you could just say, here's 8, I need to attack every single one of these, and they'll all move the needle equally. They are all equal parts of the pie of fitness. Out of those 8 different areas, there's probably only like 2 that you actually need to be concerned about. If people aren't recovering right, and if they aren't eating right, they're just making life harder on themselves, and really the training isn't gonna make a difference. The gains you'll make will be so marginal compared to what you need to do to take care of your body. And then the cool thing is that if you do those 20% to get those 80% benefits, those are gonna spill over into other areas, so that if you are recovering well and you are eating well, then your training will be that much more beneficial. I would love to hear some comments and input that you've got back to me about how you might see this applying to your life, whether it be at work, that, you know, say you work an 8-hour day. A lot of your productivity only may come from like an hour and a half of your day, and the other half, 6.5 hours, might kind of be like busy work that's not super productive. You know, like honestly, if you sit back, think about it. So I know I've seen that from time to time, and I'd just be curious to hear how you can see 80-20 situations around your life on a day-to-day basis, inside the gym, outside of the gym. So please drop some comments down below. Like I said, I'll be making some more videos where I think we'll dig into some of these areas more specifically, like recovery, for instance. There's so many different ways that people try to recover, whether it's like, you know, mobility practices, using a TENS unit, or sleep being a big one, you know. So like, I think even within some of these, we can start to look at a lot of the different inputs within recovery and training and nutrition, and try to, without getting like too analytical, without crunching the numbers 100%, maybe looking at a couple studies here and there, but really start to figure out ways that like we can maximize each of those areas by focusing on vital few instead of getting distracted by the insignificant many. It's kind of what I've heard it described as. I hope this video has been really thought-provoking. It's starting to open up your mind to the idea of 80-20, and really look forward to discussing this more in future videos. So I'll see you then.